Welcome to the Norfolk UNordinary podcast. I'm your host, Dan Johnson. I've lived here in Norfolk County for over 40 years, and together today, we're going to hear from the unordinary people who make our small towns and countryside a great place to call home. This episode of Norfolk UNordinary is brought to you by Coco Cabana Chocolate Fudge Gourmet Cafe. Follow them on Facebook and Instagram as they're always posting pictures of new and creative sweet treats. When you drop into Coco Cabana, say hello to its owner, Dave Tank, who has been serving the Port Dover community since 1995. Say hello to me too. I try to start my day at Coco's with friendly conversation and a good cup of tea. Open 7 days a week year-round. Start your morning or fuel your afternoon with a hot coffee, tea, espresso, latte, and once you see it, you'll want to grab a little sweet piece of fudge from Coco Cabana, 16 Walker Street, Port Dover, Ontario. Annaleise Carr, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. You are here today because I think you are rather unordinary. So let's hear your story. Annaleise, what do you want to talk about? Would you like to talk about anything other than swimming?
Sure.
I thought I had to ask that question because we're going to talk more than just swimming today.
Sounds good.
But most people would maybe gravitate toward, oh, she's that swimmer. And Annaleise, I think it's amazing. You are a mom. How
Yes.
awesome is it being a mom?
It is amazing. I love it so much.
Yes, and you have your daughter here right now in our house, and my wife is watching her while we record this podcast, which is amazing. She is beautiful. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
And yeah, so super thrilled that you're here today. And, you know, Annaleise, when I think about Annaleise Carr, how does it feel being the sister to Aiden Carr, up and coming superstar cross-country athlete from Laurier Brantford? How does it feel being the, you know, just the tag-along big sister to Aiden Carr? How does that feel?
You know what? It is amazing. He is killing it. He's been training so much for his runs, and I'm really, really proud of him.
Good. Aiden's a great guy. He's extremely embarrassed right now, no doubt. And Aiden's a good friend, and him and I did some running together in the summer and in the years past and stuff. And no, you are not in the shadow of Aiden Carr. Aiden, unfortunately. But Annaleise, start out, just tell us a little bit about where you're from. And we're going to get into the swim journey and all that wonderful, unordinary things about you. But tell me a little bit about where you were born and about the early days in your life.
Sounds good. From a very small town. It's called Walsh. I lived there with my parents and my 3 siblings. My grandparents lived right across the road, so we would be back and forth there all the time as well. We went to Walsh Public School. And that's about it. It's not very big. There's not much happening in Walsh.
Yeah, so you have a property. I've been out to your place before. Aiden and I shot some hoops together once and grew up sort of like in the country, right? Like It was very much in the country. And
Yes.
You loved it. You hated it. What did you...
I liked it for the most part. Sometimes it sucked when all your friends live in Simcoe and it's a 25-minute drive to get there. But other than that, you know what? It was really nice growing up on a farm. We had lots of space to play and do whatever we wanted and run around and see our grandparents across the road. It was really nice.
So I'm thinking here, did you spend time at like Turkey Point Beach, Port Dover Beach? Like where did you go where you sort of maybe got first introduced into the water?
First introduced to open water swimming was definitely Port Dover. Later on, as I was training, Turkey Point was kind of my go-to because it's only about a 10-minute drive. But actually with one of the other people that has been on this podcast, Scott Brockbank, was a big influence of my open water swimming since he was had the North Shore Athletics and was doing the open water swimming there. And I just kind of joined in with them.
Nice. Now, back in your childhood, what else did you love to do?
I was always very athletic. I did a lot of sports in elementary school. Pretty much any sport team, I was there trying out. I didn't always make every sport team, but I was just happy to be there.
So would this be like Walsh or elementary school?
Yeah,
okay.
Elementary school, so Walsh Public School. In high school, my main focus was definitely swimming. I also did cross country, anything long distance pretty much. I was always into that endurance kind of stuff.
Do you like to suffer? Like, do you enjoy pain? Like, meaning like at a young age, I remember doing like, a 1,500 meter in grade 4 was like an eternity, right? It felt so long. And most kids, they sprinted the first 100 meters and they died. Whereas me, like, I could keep going. Was that kind of like you too? And
Yeah, honestly, I'm the worst sprinter alive. Like, I suck at sprinting. I would literally get last place in the 50-meter sprint. Last. Like,
Unless there
every
was
single other person would beat me.
unless there was only one box of diapers left,
Yeah.
in which case
Yeah.
now in your phase of life, you would
All of a sudden, I'm the best sprinter.
you would get there. Because you're a mom. You got to
Yeah,
do whatever it
that's
takes.
right,
You
that's right.
sacrifice. You blow along, whatever. Oh, that's good. Yeah, I figured you were probably into all that kind of stuff. And so at an early age, did you sort of realize, you know what, I can go long?
Yeah, I'd say, you know what, right when track and field kind of started, and I think it's grade 3 or 4, you start doing track and field, I realized sprinting was not for me, not doing that anymore. 1,500 meters, and then once you get into like high school, there's a 3,000 meter. Those were the races for me. Cross country, that was for me. Sprinting, no thank you. I hate it.
It's wonderful. In here in Norfolk County, I love thinking back to the elementary school days. Life is so simple as a child. It is so easy. It's so fun.
Yep.
And that is some of like the major training ground for future development, right? Is those initial years and what we do. Super important for parents to get their kids engaged and involved at that young age. And if your kid has something that they have a little bit of talent and ability in, let them go for it.
Yeah, I agree 100%, especially now that I have my own kids. That's definitely something that's on my mind for sure.
Have you dunked your oldest in the pool yet?
Oh, 100. Both of them have been dunked in the pool, actually. Even my 5-month-old, she started doing swimming lessons when she was 3 months old, and she got dunked the first swimming lesson.
So by swimming lesson, like a coach has got the whistle and...
No. It's like a parent and taught. I just take them in. There's someone telling us what to do. But just to get comfortable in the water, I want them not necessarily to be swimmers, but to be comfortable in the water and able to swim. It's a life skill. So.
Very good. Oh man, I'm so thrilled to have you here, Annaleise. I hope that people listening to the Norfolk UNordinary podcast will be changed in some way through listening to this podcast. The hope is for the listeners here in Norfolk County to just recognize that it's a great place to live because of amazing people doing amazing things. And when you're a child, those things are going on by the adults, the parents, the generation above you who because they're doing great things, it's making it a great place to grow up. And Annaleise, you have grown up here in Norfolk County, a great spot. And part of your story into some of the incredible accomplishments that you're able to achieve, really not for yourself, but for others, which is a great part of your story. It was really is a fruit of a generation before you and multiple generations before you, who gave, sacrificed, invested in you, invested here in the children and youth of Norfolk County. And so, Annaleise, let's get into it a little bit here. A lifetime ago, we were talking before we were recording, some of the questions I was asking, you're like, I don't even remember that. I'm like, that is just such like a 5-year blur of my life. And I'm 40 now. So I know I have like decades now that seem to be a blur. It's like my 20s. Okay, that was this, and this. And it's like major life things, but like the details. So we'll do the best we can to try to get, because you're not that old. You're not touching 40, that's for sure. But a lifetime ago, you swam across Lake Ontario and Lake Erie. You raised a lot of money for cancer research, and that is truly extraordinary. We all need to hear about your journey. Some of our listeners will be familiar with it. They'll be familiar maybe with your name, but they maybe don't know the whole story because it was 2012 and 2014. So in some ways, that's a lifetime ago. My hope today is that those listening would be inspired. So this isn't like a podcast to host celebrities and for us to, be in dread because we can never. No, the hope of this podcast is that there would be something today from your story that someone who thinks they're just an ordinary Norfolk County could take and run with and say, you know what? Boom. And then set out on a journey, untapping their unordinary self. Because I think all of us have the potential to be great contributors and to continue to make Norfolk County a great place. And none of us are that far away from being unordinary. So that's my hope today. The hope today is that all the listeners would not go out, or my hope is not that they would go out and everyone wants to swim across Lake Erie, or Lake Ontario. That is not. I did the math. Okay, 99.99999% of people will never do that, and cannot do that, and should not do that. But you are one of the like 0.000001 people who has. But each of us can do something to contribute to making this county, or wherever you call home, a little bit better for the people living within the community. And I think at your age now, you are recognizing the significant that, the older you get, the more perspective you have. And 100%. You start to see sort of a bit of a shift between me as the consumer primarily to me as the producer or the contributor back. And now your story is a blend of those things, which is a wonderful quality about you as well. So Annaleise, I want to start off by just on behalf of our province, on behalf of cancer patients, on behalf of cancer survivors, I just want to say to you, thank you.
Thank you.
No doubt in my mind that your journey so many years ago now must have come with some significant personal cost, great sacrifice to accomplish what you did in order to raise funds, to work with adults and teams who guided you to help with the fundraising. That must have been wild. And I just want to say thank you. Let's get into the swim. August 19th, 2012. At the veteran age of 14, you became the youngest person to swim across Lake Ontario. You began your swim at Niagara-on-the-Lake, considered to be one of the world's most difficult open water swims. Maybe you can touch on that a little bit, why that is. You began the swim at 6:17 p.m. On August the 18th, and you arrived in the Maryland Bell Park in Toronto after swimming for almost 27 hours, touching land at 8:57 p.m. on August the 19th, 2012. Interesting note here is, Annaleise, you actually swam close to 70 kilometers due to being pushed off course due to currents and waves of approximately 6 feet high, pushing back toward Niagara-on-the-Lake.
Yes. So that's one of the things that makes Lake Ontario so difficult. It's a deep lake. It's a cold lake. The waves that are in Lake Ontario, they can get big. Lake Erie isn't like that. It's shallower. Those waves aren't as big. They're more choppy. Yeah, I didn't even realize how big those waves were. It was nighttime. I couldn't see anything. Whether there was waves or not, I couldn't see what was going on around me. All I saw was the little lights on the boats and my coach yelling at me to keep going and everybody on the boats telling me to keep going. Like, I didn't realize what was going on around me, really. Yeah, I don't know what else to say.
You also set the record for being the youngest person to ever swim 24 hours continuously. Is that record still stand? Do you know?
I'm not 100% sure about that record. I know youngest person to swim across Lake Ontario has been broke. There has been somebody, I think a month or two younger than me, but I'm not sure about that 24-hour one. That's something I'll have to look into for sure.
How do you swim for 24 hours without stopping?
Oh man, that's a great question, Dan. Honestly, like if I went and jumped in the water today, I would not be able to do that, I don't think.
Okay, so here you are, 10 years later, 24 hours of straight swimming. Is that crazy to you?
Oh, 100%. Like,
okay.
That sounds not only crazy, that sounds kind of scary. Like, to be honest.
Does it sound unhealthy and rather ridiculous? Or
just a little bit, maybe. Yeah. I think if my daughter came up to me and told me she wanted to do that, I would, and if I hadn't have done that, I would think, wow, that's a crazy idea. But you know what? Like, I feel like I had so many people supporting me, my family, my crew, like Norfolk in general, just supporting me and pushing me to get to my goal, that there was no way I wasn't going to do that because of that support.
I mean, I'm speechless. I don't even know what questions to ask because I know there is something significant has to be going on in your brain, in your heart, in your soul to be able to swim in the dark in a cold lake with huge waves. And in hour 2, you have 22 more hours to go.
I did not know I had 22 more hours to go. I'll just say that right now. I thought that swim was going to be like, my coach had planned, we talked about a 16-hour swim, not a 27-hour swim. No way. We thought, okay, we're training for max, like maybe 20 hours, probably not. Like, let's say 16 hours. And then we got the waves, and that wasn't in our plan, but it's open water swimming. You don't know what's going to happen. You're not in a pool where there's no waves, there's no wind, there's weather out there. You have to be able to just take it as it is.
Amazing. I can't even understand how you could possibly do this. Anyway, let's keep going here. You had a goal. So the whole purpose of this was to you had a goal of raising $30,000 for a local camp. It's actually here in Norfolk County called Camp Trillium. It's now called Campfire Circle, by the way. It's been renamed, and so it's campfirecircle.org if you wanted to check that out. But 10 days after your swim, you had raised about $120,000, and so awesome, 4 times your goal. I don't know where that number of 30,000 came from, but amazing, awesome, right?
Yeah.
Question for you: why Camp Trillium? Was there a personal connection? Was this like a recommend? Like, what was your personal connection to Camp Trillium?
I guess there wasn't necessarily a personal connection to Camp Trillium. So when I started doing open water swimming, and I started in Port Dover with North Shore Athletics, there was a 10-kilometer swim at the end of the season that you can do, and it was from Pottahawk to, I want to say, Turkey Point. I think that was the 10-kilometer swim that Scott Brockbank would organize and put on for the swimmers that would like to participate. And the year that I participated in that, we were raising money for Camp Trillium, actually. So I guess Scott was technically the one who introduced me to Camp Trillium. Before we did that swim, we got to go and visit the camp. And as soon as I went into that camp, I wanted to do more. I was 12 or 13 at the time, okay. I'd say. But as soon as I went in there, I knew that this place, like, there was something there that I needed to help more. Not just with this 10-kilometer swim. I actually wanted to volunteer, but I was too young. I wasn't allowed. They told me, no, we don't accept volunteers that are 12, 13 years old. So I left there feeling a little bit defeated, actually, because I really wanted to do more, and I didn't know yet how I was going to do that. So anyways, we did the 10-kilometer swim. We raised the money for Camp Trillium, and it was still bothering me. I still wanted to do more for this camp. I had been swimming competitively since I was 4 years old. I fell in love with open water swimming that year. I think it was 2011. And I started learning more about Marilyn Bell, and that's kind of where I found out about swimming the lakes, which I really didn't even know was a thing until I started finding out more about Marilyn Bell and what she did. And that's kind of where it all started. And once I learned that, I was like, wait a second, I like open water swimming. This is a goal that I can do. And while I'm doing this, I can raise money for Camp Trillium. And that's kind of how it all started.
Where does a 12-year-old girl get the idea that she needs to be doing something like this? I mean, isn't this something that adults do? Isn't this something that professionals, business owners, like, isn't this something that people with money, they give to charities? Where does a 12-year-old girl get that from?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think, like, I grew up in a religious family. We went to church. We always wanted to kind of, like, do good for ourselves and for our community, I'd say. And I think just growing up in that kind of aspect with my life, I wanted to help in more ways with the community, especially in Norfolk. And that's why I really wanted Camp Trillium as well. It's where I live. It's helping people who are around me. Like, it's in my community, these people. And I think that just had a lot to do with it. My family, I guess, honestly.
So when you walked first time into Camp Trillium, what did you see that really moved you?
Everything they were doing for those kids. I mean, people always say like how hard it was to swim across Lake Ontario and Lake Erie, but that is like nothing compared to what these kids are going through all the time and like every day with their treatments and chemo and all of this stuff they have to go through. What I did is nothing. Like, they are so much braver and stronger than I am, and just seeing like how much these people are helping them and like letting these kids just be kids. Like, they get to go to this camp and forget about everything that's at the hospital, their treatments, everything outside of what's going on at this camp. Like, they just get to go and have fun. And that was awesome to me. Like, I thought that was just the coolest thing ever. These kids can just relax. They don't have to worry about like all this horrible stuff that's going on.
Amazing. As a dad who has a child with cancer, it's all the more with the perspective I have of now experiencing it so close to home. It's super special for me to talk to someone like you, because we've been a recipient the last few months of all that generous support, help, donations, and giving that Ontario, Canada, around the world, people who do things like what you did in order to contribute to, whatever aspect of care for those who are ill. It's awesome. I'm appreciative and thankful for what you did. Now let's move on to swim number 2. Lest you think Annaleise isn't that impressive, or swim number 2. So 2 years later, you set out to raise more dollars, and you set out to be the first person to cross Central Lake Erie. What does that mean?
So I guess the route that I took, normally it's a shorter route. So they go, I'm not sure the exact starting and ending, but it's about like 25 kilometers. So it's a little bit shorter than what Lake Ontario is. But I'm like, I already did Lake Ontario. I know I can swim 50 kilometers. I want to try to do a little bit more. So the route that I did was from Erie, Pennsylvania my intention was to go to Port Dover. Mm-hmm. That doesn't always go as planned. Like I said, there's weather outside. You have to just play it as it is. So I ended up going from Port Dover to Long Point. We stopped there. There was choppy waves. There was bad weather coming in. It was a very hard decision to make, and it was my decision to stop at Long Point. It was devastating at the time. I remember I cried like the whole boat ride in, but I knew it was the right decision, and I knew no one was going to be upset with me for stopping at Long Point. I was probably the most upset with myself for that. But yeah, so then I did finish the swim. I did Long Point to Port Dover about a month later, and I still did my Lake Erie Central crossings.
I remember following that swim and your little red beacon. I don't know what the app was or online or whatever it was. I don't even remember 2014. I think I was living in Brampton, Ontario then. And I remember following it and being like, why is she going over there? Now, not from a position of ignorance. Why is she going over there? No, but recognizing something must be going on. And I think they had Twitter back then. Yeah. I think there was some tweeting going on. And so I was aware of what was happening. And like everyone else following along, we were cheering you on and hoping for the best. So many questions here. This is so intriguing to me. So departing Erie, Pennsylvania toward Port Dover, the point of this second swim was to continue building on this idea that, you know what, if we do this, I think people will continue to give ultimately to bless these children. Mm-hmm. That was what was really driving and behind all of this. Is that right? For you anyway. Is that right?
100%. Yeah, 100%. I knew the community was going to help out again. And that's actually why I wanted to end in Port Dover. That was my main spot of training. It was where a lot of my crew kind of was from. So that's why I chose Port Dover as my ending spot, to end in Norfolk County and see my community that has been supporting me for all of these years at the finish line, waiting for me and cheering me on, for sure. So
meanwhile, during your training for the second swim, you were on a bit of a book tour and a speaking tour. So you had worked with a publisher and author on putting together a book. that book was entitled Annaleise Carr, How I Conquered Lake Ontario to Help Kids Battling Cancer. And so what was it like writing a book? I mean, did you write it? Were you more like given the story and someone was writing it down? Like, was it fun? What was it? What was that like?
For sure. That's a great question.
You were 14, 15?
Yeah. I was like, so that was between my two swims. So yeah, I was about 14, 15. So Deborah Ellis, I guess she used to live in Norfolk County. I'm not sure if she still lives here, but she's an author in Norfolk County, an amazing author, like has wrote incredible books, incredible series. She reached out to me like right after Lake Ontario and said like, I'm really interested in sitting down with you and possibly writing a book. At the time, like there was so much going on. Like I had media reaching out to me. I had people reaching out about speaking engagements. Like there was so much going on. I couldn't even think about writing a book. So I said, you know what, Deborah, like this sounds really cool and I'm really, really interested, but I need some time to take some stuff in here. So then eventually I messaged her back. I'm like, you know what, I would love to sit down with you. I would love to do this. So I went to her house, we sat down and I basically told her my story and she wrote it down. It was really fun. Like she made it really easy. We sat down, we'd have like some juice, some snacks. I'd just tell her about my story and she was just writing it as we went.
Juice and snacks because you're just a little kid, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're a teenager at that time, but no.
I was going to say tea, but then I'm like, I was only 15. I don't think I was even drinking tea.
No, exactly. So you're on a book tour, you're a speaking tour, you are showing up places and part of fundraising, and that fundraising went well up to the event. And now you mentioned how this swim didn't quite go as planned. How can anything go as planned when you're swimming? Yeah. 75 kilometers. So I do triathlon. I enjoy it. I enjoy swimming because you have to do swimming if you do triathlon. And if I was to articulate, I'm not an anti-swimmer. I'm not opposed to it by any means. It's not incredibly social while you're swimming.
No,
so bike, cycling, and running and that, I think that's part of the draw into that activity. And so swimming is a bit of a different thing. So the longest I've swum in my life is like 6 kilometers. Okay, which in comparison to what you do is nothing, but 6 kilometers is like an hour and 30 minutes.
That's a pretty good swim.
That's a long time of swimming, and like that's enough. That's more than enough.
Yeah.
And so swimming that long of a period, how, when things go not according to plan, what is going on in your mind? And in particular, maybe take us back to 2 a.m. in the pitch black in a rolling cold lake, swimming across, and things are not going according to plan, whether that's Lake Ontario or in Lake Erie, or a rougher ride in shallower lake in Lake Erie, but a bit of a rougher chop.
So I think there's quite a few things that are going on in your head at that time, especially when it's like pitch dark. You can't really see anything around you. But you have to pick a good crew. You have to pick good people out there that are going to cheer you on. They're not just going to let you like say, okay, I'm done. Like that's not what you want. You want people out there who are going to push you. I would not let my family on those boats. Not a chance. Like if my mom was out there, especially on Lake Ontario, and saw those waves, 100%, she would have been like, get in here. Like you're done. I'm calling it.
Totally understandable, right?
Yeah, 100%. And now that I have kids, I totally understand that 100%. With Lake Erie, they really, really wanted to be on the boats. And I said, you know what? Like, it went good the first time without you guys out there. Like, I'm sorry, but I just don't think it's the right plan here. So the only family I had on board for both swims was my Aunt Lisa. And she was there pretty much. She was making me treats. Like, she brought all these snacks that I liked. And she's a really good baker. So she would bake all my favorite treats. And I would get those during my swim. And I know at one point when I was having a really hard time on Lake Ontario, she came out on the boat and I saw her smiling and waving at me, and that really pushed me to keep going. But also like my pacers, the people who I have in the water with me, and they can't be in the middle of the night, but come like sunrise when those pacers can get in with you, it really makes a big difference when you have trained with the other pacers that are in with you, like Scott Brockbank, Nancy, Chris Peters. There's other pacers as well. But they make a big difference too. Like we had our inside jokes. Not that you can talk while you're swimming, but like they'd make faces at me under the water and like stick their tongue out at me under the water and stuff. And it's like, okay, this is just another day. We're just out here. We're training for a swim. Like this isn't a big deal. We're just having fun. That makes a big difference as well. And then two other things that always went through my head, again, was thinking of those kids at Camp Trillium and what they have to go through. That really pushed me to keep going. What I was doing is not as hard as what they were doing. And then another thing, growing up in a religious household and going to church, there was specific Bible verses that really kept me going. And one was Philippians 4:13, that I actually have tattooed on my wrist now because I had it wrote on my hands for both swims. And whenever things got really tough, I would see this verse on my hand as I'm taking a stroke, and I would think, okay, I got this. Like, you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. You can do this, Annaleise, and that would keep me going.
Wow. So, Annaleise, for the record, were you taking performance-enhancing steroids?
No.
No?
No.
Is that okay?
That's illegal, Dan.
All right. I believe you. Another question. How do you eat food?
That's a great question, actually. And a lot of people think it's really funny how I did this. I feel like we did it a little differently than some of the other swimmers. We actually used a lacrosse stick. And my coach would put the food in the like netting part of the lacrosse stick.
What kind of food? What are you talking about?
So it was different on each swim. So on my one swim, I had like Jello that had cottage cheese in it, like Jello that had yogurt in it, like high protein foods.
Easily digestible.
Yeah. Pancakes with chia seeds, like anything that had high protein. Once in a while, my aunt would give some treats and put that in there, and then I'd get a little, like, she makes this one treat that's like my favorite. So I had this a few times. It's like a graham cracker and like caramel and chocolate. It's so good. So that would kind of be like a treat to keep me going. I'm trying to think of I had so many different things, which was really nice because I feel like a lot of like adults that swim across, they just have those like squeeze and goes, like they squeeze this stuff and then they're done. But I did not want that. Like I wanted some good stuff to keep me going while I was swimming. So
yeah, see, for me in triathlon, like the hammer gel, the goo, all that product, it works for me. 100%. Other people, they hate it, doesn't work for them. For me, my body has no problem with it.
Yep,
Just squeeze it down the hatch.
Yeah.
So sure. You sort of stop, tread water, eat.
Yeah.
Let's say you're 15 hours into swimming. And what's easier at that point, swimming or treading water?
Neither. They're both hard at that point. I guess the only way of kind of relaxing at 15 hours in is like laying on your back and just looking up at the sky and floating. Right. That was your like relaxing time, I guess you could call it.
Pacing wise, it's hard. If you're not a swimmer, you wouldn't really be thinking about pace, but it's like how fast is a car going down the track or how fast is a baseball being pitched. Swimmers think about these things too. What's my pace per X amount of distance? So if you're swimming in a pool, you might go do a training workout where I'm going to swim 100 meters at 1 minute and 30 seconds per 100 meter. That would be the pace.
Yeah.
That might be a speed interval you're going to do. And then during your recovery or the next 50 meters, you're going to swim at 2 minutes and 30 seconds per 100 meters. When you're going to swim for 16, that's your plan anyway. When you're going to swim for over 20 hours, how do you pace? Do you start fast, finish slow? Do you negative split? I mean, do you even think about these things? Because it's such a long distance of time. Is it just you're going off how you feel? Did you have a plan, like a target time and then a map of how you're going to do that? Like if you're running a marathon, a 4-hour marathon, you might plan to start slow and build, whatever. How do you figure that out before you go do a swim like this?
Honestly, you don't really figure that out. Like I said, you don't really know what's going to happen. Like you are controlled by the lake. Like whatever happens in that lake, that's what's gonna kind of add or take away that time, I guess. So depending on the conditions that you have when you're doing this swim, it can make a really big difference. If you have a nice flat, like crystal lake, perfect day for a long distance swim, you can make that swim in like 14 hours. If you have a day where you have 6-foot waves and they're pushing you back all night long like I did, you're going to take 27 hours, and there's no way to really plan for a pace, I guess.
So you're purely going off of effort.
Yeah.
In other words, you've got to control the heart rate.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to pace yourself. Okay. So you didn't walk into it with any sort of a sense. I was just curious to know, as someone who does think through those things in training, how you prepared. What was the longest swim you'd ever done before your first, before the cross of Lake Ontario?
Okay, I'm trying to think about this. So before you do your lake crossing, you have to do like a trial swim. Which
like the
is
sanctioning body for open water swimming says you have to do. Okay.
Yeah. So it has to be in the lake you're going to swim. So I had to do it in Lake Ontario. I honestly, like, this part to me is a blur. I don't remember exactly where I did it. And I feel like it was less than 20 kilometers, this trial swim. Like, it's basically just to go out with your crew, make sure you can, like, communicate with them and you can, like, swim. I guess, like, your swim masters out there, they're watching you, making sure you know the rules, doing what you're supposed to be doing on this swim. And that's it. That was the longest swim I did. So it was under 20 kilometers.
All the more impressive, Annaleise. Back in the story here, during the second swim across Erie, I found in research you raised around another $230,000. What are these numbers, $500,000 plus dollars, that you were able to facilitate being raised towards Camp Trillium? What does that number mean to you? What is that, when you think of those numbers? Can you wrap your head around it?
I still can't wrap my head around it. My goal was $30,000 in total. Like,
Which is a lot of money.
Yeah. When I came up with that goal, my dad looked at me like I had 3 heads. He's like, there is absolutely no way we're going to be able to raise that, Annaleise. Like, he's like, that's an amazing goal. I'm proud of you for coming up with that goal and doing all this. But that's going to be tough, Annaleise. Any
dad would be thinking, oh man, she's going to raise 10 and I'm going to have to give 20. No, I don't know. I don't know what the circumstances were, but.
I mean, like, that just goes to show Norfolk County and how incredible the community here is. Like, they got on board with this. They supported me. I'm sure some of them thought that I was some crazy kid that was going to go out there and, like, not do this. Like, I wasn't going to make that swim. I had adults tell a 14-year-old me that there's no way that you're going to make this swim. Like, but they still donated. They still gave money because of the cause that they were donating to, and what Camp Trillium was doing. And I still can't wrap my head around it. The fact that we raised $500,000 for Camp Trillium, it just blows my mind. Amazing.
Gonna read some awards that you and this is not, Annaleise, you're a very humble girl. I've known you for quite a number of years now, but I share this with you to celebrate. Okay. Celebrate you, celebrate all those who are listening, who are part of your journey, celebrate the combined collective teamwork that led to just these amazing accomplishments. In 2012, you were awarded the World Open Water Swimming Association. You were the Woman of the Year. Were you a woman then?
That was a crazy award. I still can't believe that one.
Were you a girl? Were you a woman? How are you? How do you classify yourself at that point?
I don't know.
You were 14? 14?
Yeah, we traveled to Ireland for that award. Like, it was, it still is, I just don't even know what to say.
It's okay. You don't need to say anything. Just celebrate. You were awarded the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal, presented to you by Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper. And the process for that was that you were nominated by Norfolk County Council for this award. So on your behalf, they submitted, hey, check this woman out, 14-year-old woman, and you were considered and you were awarded. Tell me, what does that, someone that isn't that informed on what this award is, what is that award and what did that one mean to you?
Oh man, like, all of those awards at that time, like, I don't even think.
Did you wake up and find out you got another award?
Like, I don't even think I fully understood the awards that I was getting.
No, you don't. You're 14.
No,
you don't.
like
You
I
can't.
didn't know what was going on. Like all of a sudden we were going to Ottawa to see the Prime Minister, and I barely even knew who the Prime Minister was. Like it was wild. Like I still can't believe that we went and met Stephen Harper to get this award. Like my family was there, my crew was there. It was such a big deal for all of us to get to go and do that together, because it wasn't just me who crossed that lake. Like I had so much help from my crew, and it wouldn't have been possible without them.
Did you get to meet the Queen?
No.
I am not into anything royal family, so I would not have been disappointed. I don't know if you were, but...
No.
Okay, you're good. 2012, 2014, you were the Ontario Junior Citizen of the Year. I'm going to stop. I only have one more award, okay, Annaleise? You were the first person ever to be named with that honor twice. And you were the World Open Water Woman of the Year Award winner. I think we already touched on that one. Okay, so Annaleise, help the rest of us mere mortals out, okay? Where does your drive come from? What motivates you to pursue such excellence? You know, who do you look to for inspiration? Now, you have certainly touched on this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what's unordinary about you is that at the end of the day, it's not an internal drive, but in this case, it was seeing a need and saying, you know what, I could do something, right?
Yeah.
Even in the face of those that would said, you can't do anything. Not you can't do anything, but this is unattainable. There, I think, is where some of that internal drive would start to come in, and you certainly do have it. You have the genetics, you had the training, you had the ability to persevere, to endure injury, endure 4:30 wake-up calls, make sacrifices, count the cost, and move forward. There's a lot of internal drive there. But I think what I'm hearing in your story, and which is good news for the rest of us out here, because all of us can recognize the needs around us and say, you know what, if a 14-year-old girl can do that, think of what I could do.
Mm-hmm.
Is that
100%.
Is that some maybe good analysis there, Annaleise?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, never in a million years would I have thought that I would be swimming across the lake. I mean, it was just going and seeing Camp Trillium, and as soon as I went into that place, like, there was something, like I had to do something. And that was just how it started. And I mean, I feel like anybody can have that. It doesn't necessarily have to be a Camp Trillium. Like, it can be, I'm trying to think of other ideas. I mean, even just raising money to get a better community center for your community, I guess. Like, if that's something you're really motivated for and you really want to be able to do that for your community, that's something you can do. Like, there's so many possibilities. Like, it's not just kids with cancer and like camps. Like, there's so many other needs in the world that people can realize that they need help.
Do you think that a more meaningful life is one that's lived thinking about others, even ahead of your own?
I think so. Yeah.
Doesn't that sound backwards?
A little bit, I guess.
From our cultural perspective, it does.
Yeah.
And I think we're raised, if you watch TV or live on the internet at all, we live in an ad-filled society that tells us, here's what you need. Buy this, get that. And I think that trickles its way into the way we think about relationships with other people, the way we think about what we're going to pursue in life, career path, all that stuff. It's very a me-driven sort of culture we live in. And I'm not here to say that is entirely bad, but I think that can set people up to really what their life becomes is sort of like what will make me, me, right?
Yeah. Rather
than recognizing the needs of others, that I think we're made for community. We're made to help and contribute to love your neighbor as yourself. Like some of these sort of Christian-rooted principles that you and I would affirm and in some way we're raised in. That's your story, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And at 14, life was not that complex. You saw a need and you jumped out. You get older, life's more complex, and it's like, oh man, do I have room for this? I mean,
Yeah.
could you go and do that now?
It would
Put
take
your
a
kids
lot
on
more
your back
time.
and-
Yeah, like
yeah,
it
no,
just it's
right?
not.
No.
Yeah, I just don't have as much, I guess, time, and not that necessarily like I wouldn't want to, because 100% I would want to go and help them in any way that I can. But my focus right now is my family and my kids, and I'm taking a break, I guess, from those other things for now.
But you're still serving others.
100%. Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
And so Norfolk County, I grew up here, and this is a place where others gave to me, right? And others gave to you. And wherever you are in your phase of life, you can continue to give.
Mm-hmm.
Your capacity changes, the opportunities change, what kind of activities or what kind of resources you're able to give, all that stuff changes. But the what shouldn't change is the mindset or the idea that, you know, my life is to give and to help and to contribute. Thank you for helping the rest of us mere mortals recognize the fact that we can aspire to do something great, even though it might be simple in scale. It wouldn't be as big as raising $500,000 and swimming across. It doesn't have to be.
No.
It doesn't have to be. You know, if everybody just gave a bit,
Yeah.
right? And it's, you know, it doesn't really matter. I've been a pastor in a church. I've been a public school teacher. Whether you're, in business, whatever you're in, whatever sort of activities or hobbies or community groups you've been in, everyone knows, just numerically speaking, if a lot of people gave a little, it would be a bigger benefit than relying on a few people who give a lot.
Yeah.
And give, I would say, maybe not too much, but they have to give so much because of the lack of contribution from others. And so I think that's where all of us listening can be like, hey, you know what? I may not in scale accomplish something, but what if I and many others gave what we could give?
Yeah. And it doesn't necessarily have to be money. It can be your time.
Oh,
it
yeah.
can be like you can just go volunteer to help. Like I know at Camp Trillium people volunteer to help build the cabins, like to help paint, to help. It doesn't have to be money. People need volunteers to help just make things and do things, and like there's so many different ways to help those in need, for sure.
Annaleise, what is tougher, swimming across a lake or being a mom of two under two?
Oh man. There's different tough things in both of those for sure. But I wouldn't change either for the world. I love having 2 kids under 2. It is one of the greatest things in my life by far. Like way, way better than swimming that lake.
All the moms out there listening are like, oh, I hate her. You didn't really answer the question, by the way. I'm going to ask the question again. What is tougher? Swimming across a lake or being a mom of 2? Come on, Annaleise, you got it. You can't sit on the fence. Which one's tougher? What do you think?
Probably being a mom of 2, under 2, I think.
Okay, men out there, listen up. I agree. I watch my wife. We've been married 13 years now. Our kids are 10, 8, and 6. And my wife is the toughest human being I've ever met. I am such a wimp compared to her. And my wife is tough, and I think I'm thinking back to those days when those kids were particularly young. Man, my wife endured a lot in order to raise them, and I admire her. So good answer to the question. I think you answered that one right. Annaleise, just sort of wrapping up here, a couple quick ones here. Number 1, what kind of a mark do you think you've left in Norfolk County? And I know this is hard for you because you're like, I don't want to talk about me, and I get it. But what kind of a mark do you think you've left?
That is such a hard question. I'd say like after my swims, I got to do a lot of speaking at elementary schools, and a lot of those kids would come up to me and say like, because of you, like I want to start swimming, or I want to raise money for this. There was one kid that I forget exactly what they did. It might have been like a lemonade stand or something like this, but they sold this lemonade all summer long, and then they gave the money from that lemonade stand to Camp Trillium. Like, these kids were going, and they were like 8, like 7, 8, like so young, and coming up with these ideas of making money for Camp Trillium and other organizations that needed people to give them money, I guess. Like, it was just like so rewarding hearing all of these kids' stories, and like not just stories, but like seeing what they were doing. It was amazing. Yeah.
What's up next for you?
Just being a mom. I have my kids in swimming lessons. Not necessarily that they have to be swimmers, but I want them to be able to swim, and I want to just focus on them and what they want to do over the next few years. So,
you plan to stay in Norfolk County long term?
I plan to come back to Norfolk County. I'm currently not in Norfolk County, and it makes me super sad.
You're close, right?
I'm close.
You're very
yeah,
close.
I'm very close to Norfolk, but I'm not in Norfolk. And Norfolk is it's my community. I work in Port Dover, and I love being in Port Dover. It is, I mean, I make a 50, actually it's more like 55-minute drive to come to work in Port Dover, because I love it here. The people here are incredible. They're just so nice. Everybody wants to stop and talk, and I love that. Like, that's one of my favorite things about Norfolk County, is how nice every single person here is.
Couple hard questions here.
Okay.
I don't let my guests get away with no. What advice would you give to your younger self? I mean, you're so aged and experienced now. You're mid-20s. What advice would you give to your younger self?
This is a really hard one for me. I don't regret a single thing that I did. I'm glad I did those swims for Camp Trillium. That is a huge part of my life. But at the same time, I lost out on being a kid, honestly. Like, I didn't get to have all the other experiences that the 15-year-olds in grade 9 had. Like, I didn't party. Which wasn't necessarily a bad thing at the time, but at the time I kind of wanted to be doing those things. And now that I look back, that's fine that I didn't have them. But it would have been nice to be able to just be a kid sometimes and not worry about speaking engagements, like training, all of that kind of stuff. Sometimes I'm kind of sad I missed out on those things.
Hear ya. Could be a hard thing to talk about, can it? Mm-hmm. Who are some folks maybe that you want to say thank you to? And now we'll recognize that someone like yourself, in the journey you've been on and the accomplishments, that list should be hundreds of people long. And so we're not going to list hundreds of people. But, you know, who are some of maybe the unassuming people who had an impact? Because let's face it, I would love for the listeners to hear that they can play a valuable role in the life of another person, especially youth, regardless of their economic status, regardless of their education, regardless of the kind of career they're in. Everybody can be an unassuming helper to others. Maybe who are some of those unassumings that impacted your life?
Definitely not unassuming, but I can never overmention how much my family helped me. Like, my parents did everything but swim the lake pretty much. They drove me to practice. They drove me to the speaking engagements. They did everything for me. And like, at the time, I don't think I realized how much they were doing. And now that I'm an adult and I can kind of think back to that, like, they didn't have time for anything else during those years. So I can never, ever thank them enough. And that's not just my parents. Like, that's my siblings. My siblings were at, like, everything helping me raise money. I remember Aiden. He was, like, I don't even know, like 10. And we were at Friendship Festival in Simcoe. And we had wristbands. And he had, like, 20 wristbands on his arm trying to sell these wristbands to help raise money. And Larissa, McKenna, all of them, they helped me so much. My grandparents, every single person in my family. My teacher in grade 8, actually all the teachers at Walsh Public School for that matter, I would stay inside at recess to do homework so that I could leave right after school and go do my training. And they helped me so much with that kind of stuff, letting me be able to do that so that I could go and train for these swims. And like, that's something that I don't talk about much, but that made a big difference in how I was able to train for my swims. And even in grade 9 and grade 10, when I was training for Lake Erie, I had a lot of teachers that would say to me, like, don't tell anyone else this, but what you're doing outside of school is just as important, if not more important, than what you're learning here. And that was a big deal for me because it was hard to not be at school sometimes. And like in grade 9, it was often that I wasn't there because of speaking engagements. And they were so helpful. When I came back to school the next day, they would help me with everything that I missed. And it just made it a lot easier to be able to go and do those speaking engagements. I'm trying to think. There are so many people I could thank, like my crew, my coaches. Like there's so many people. My church family too. Like there was just everybody in Norfolk County. There was so many people supporting me, and I couldn't have done it without any of these people.
We hear the phrase, it takes a village. And the idea there is that to raise a child, there's this, multifaceted involvement of people in the lives of a child that would raise him. And so the village would be the total of all those different places, maybe a church, maybe the school, things going on in the community and the family. I think there's a bit of an overemphasis on that. And in the sense of there's an underemphasis of how important the family is. And I think it takes a family to raise a child. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's good that you started with mentioning your family. And for you now, family, mm-hmm. right? You can make that shift in recognizing the village will be there. And there's an amazing village here in Norfolk County that will supplement, that will be the cherry on top of what you're doing in the home. And moms and dads out there, love your kids, raise them, love them, mm-hmm. be gracious, be forgiving, instruct them, train them in the way they should go. And I'm glad that your parents had that role in your life, which set you up for success, for the village to come around you and to help you be amazing and to help you achieve a higher level goal. That was pretty incredible. Annaleise Carr, you are unordinary. I wish you the best in whatever you continue doing in swimming, coaching, training, helping, contributing in that, which you are excellent in. Wish you all the best. And wish you all the best as a mom and raising. And thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today and sharing your story with us. That was very brave of you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
This episode of Norfolk Unordinary is brought to you by Coco Cabana Chocolate Fudge Gourmet Cafe. Follow them on Facebook and Instagram, 16 Walker Street, Port Dover, Ontario.